The explosion rocked the entire forward operating base at 0300 hours. As alarms blared and soldiers scrambled for cover, Staff Sergeant Maria Santos calmly walked toward the source of the blast while everyone else ran away. Her fellow soldiers had always seen her as just maintenance, the quiet woman who fixed helicopters and kept their equipment running. But what they didn't know was that before she became an aircraft mechanic, Maria had spent 3 years as an explosive ordnance disposal specialist, defusing bombs in the most dangerous corners of Afghanistan. Tonight, when a secondary device threatened to level half the base and kill dozens of sleeping soldiers, her hidden expertise would be the only thing standing between life and catastrophe. Staff Sergeant Maria Santos wiped the grease from her hands as she finished the final inspection on the Black Hawk's rotor assembly. The Afghan sun beat down mercilessly on forward operating base Phoenix, but Maria had long ago learned to work through the heat. Around her, the motor pool buzzed with activity as soldiers prepared for the evening patrol rotations. She moved with practiced efficiency, checking torque specifications and hydraulic fluid levels with the same methodical precision that had earned her a reputation as one of the finest aircraft mechanics in the 82nd Airborne Division. "Hey Santos, you almost done with that bird?" called out Specialist Johnson from across the hangar. "Lieutenant wants it ready for the 1800 hours mission." Maria nodded without looking up, her focus entirely on the maintenance checklist in her hands. This was how her fellow soldiers knew her: reliable, competent, but quietly invisible. She fixed their helicopters, kept their vehicles running, and ensured their equipment never failed when lives depended on it. What they didn't know was the weight of secrets she carried beneath her exterior. As she secured the engine cowling, Maria's fingers unconsciously traced the small scar on her left wrist, a reminder of a different time, a different job, when her hands worked with far more dangerous machinery than helicopter engines. She had spent 3 years in Afghanistan before this deployment, but not as a mechanic. Those years belonged to a part of her life she had deliberately left behind, buried beneath maintenance manuals and repair schedules. The other soldiers respected her work ethic and trusted her skills, but they saw her as exactly what her uniform indicated: aircraft maintenance, nothing more. She preferred it that way. During evening chow, she sat with the mechanics and listened to their stories about home, their girlfriends, their plans after deployment. She laughed at their jokes and shared in their frustrations about broken equipment and long hours. But she never talked about her first tour, never mentioned the specialized training that had taught her to dismantle death with surgical precision. Captain Rodriguez approached Maria's workstation as she completed her final equipment check of the day. "Santos, excellent work on the maintenance rotation this week. Your attention to detail is keeping our birds in the air." She appreciated the recognition, but it also reinforced the comfortable anonymity she had cultivated. As far as anyone at FOB Phoenix knew, she was just another dedicated mechanic who happened to be exceptionally good at her job. The truth was far more complicated. Before she had ever touched a helicopter engine, Maria Santos had been one of the military's elite explosive ordnance disposal specialists. She had crawled through rubble in Kandahar, diffusing improvised explosive devices that could level city blocks. She had stared down timers counting towards zero and felt the weight of entire units depending on her steady hands and encyclopedic knowledge of explosive devices. The transition to aircraft maintenance had been intentional, a way to serve her country while stepping back from the razor's edge of bomb disposal work. Her fellow mechanics knew she had previous deployment experience, but they assumed it had been in the same capacity. Sergeant Williams often joked that she must have been born with a wrench in her hand, given how naturally she understood complex mechanical systems. If only he knew that her mechanical intuition had been honed on devices designed to kill, not machines built to fly. The irony wasn't lost on her that both jobs required the same core skills: patience, precision, and the ability to remain calm under pressure. As the day shift ended and evening approached, Maria secured her tools and began the familiar routine of closing down the maintenance bay. The base had settled into its nightly rhythm, with perimeter guards taking their positions and off-duty soldiers gathering in the recreation tent. She looked forward to the quiet hours ahead, time to read and decompress from another day of keeping the unit's aircraft mission-ready. The predictability of her current role brought her a peace that her previous work had never allowed. The explosion shattered the tranquil evening at exactly 0300 hours, jolting every soldier on Phoebe Phoenix from sleep. Maria's eyes snapped open in her bunk as the concussive blast rattled the prefabricated walls of the maintenance crew quarters. Years of combat experience kicked in immediately. This wasn't incoming mortar fire or a rocket attack. The sound signature was wrong, the blast pattern too localized. This was an explosive device detonating from within the base perimeter. Emergency alarms began blaring as soldiers poured from their sleeping quarters, some in full gear, others in whatever clothing they could grab. Through her small window, Maria could see the orange glow of flames near the communications bunker, approximately 200 meters from the main barracks complex. Her training automatically began analyzing the situation. Blast radius, potential casualties, structural damage assessment. But she forced herself to think like a mechanic, not an EOD specialist. She needed to check on her aircraft and equipment, ensure no damage to the motor pool. As she stepped outside, the chaos of a military base under attack unfolded around her. Officers shouted orders while medics rushed toward the blast site with stretchers and medical supplies. The acrid smell of burning electronics and diesel fuel filled the night air. Maria moved toward the maintenance hangar, ostensibly to assess damage to her workspace. But her trained eyes were conducting a completely different evaluation. The blast pattern, the secondary fires, the way debris had scattered, everything about this explosion told a story that made her blood run cold. Her worst fears were confirmed when she spotted the telltale signs near the communications bunker. This hadn't been a single device. The scattered metal fragments, the burn patterns on nearby structures, the way the explosion had been contained to a specific area, all indicated a primary blast designed to draw personnel to a specific location. Somewhere in that rubble, hidden among the twisted metal and concrete, a secondary device was waiting. And when rescue teams and investigators gathered at the blast site, it would detonate with devastating effect. Maria's heart raced as she watched soldiers and medics converging on the blast site, completely unaware of the deadly trap waiting for them. Every instinct from her EOD training screamed danger, but revealing her expertise would shatter the carefully constructed identity she had built over the past year. She watched Captain Rodriguez coordinate the response team while Sergeant Martinez directed traffic away from the immediate blast area. They were good soldiers following proper emergency protocols, but they had no idea they were walking into a killing zone. The decision crystallized in an instant when she saw two young privates from her maintenance crew jogging toward the communications bunker with fire extinguishers. Private Chen and Private Morrison, barely 20 years old, eager to help, completely oblivious to the secondary device that would turn them into casualties. Maria couldn't let that happen. Her secret identity meant nothing if good soldiers died because she stayed silent. "Stop! Everyone stop moving toward that blast site!" Her voice cut through the chaos with an authority that surprised even her. Soldiers froze mid-step, turning to look at the aircraft mechanic who had suddenly taken command. Captain Rodriguez looked confused but recognized something in Maria's tone that demanded attention. "Sir, I need everyone to halt their advance and establish a perimeter at least 50 meters back from the blast area. Right now." "Santos, what are you talking about? We have potential casualties in there," Rodriguez replied, but his forward movement had stopped. Maria stepped closer, her voice dropping to the firm, urgent tone she had used countless times when talking nervous soldiers through bomb disposal procedures. "Captain, that was a primary blast assigned to draw us in. There's going to be a secondary device somewhere in that rubble, and when enough of us gather around to investigate, it's going to detonate. I need you to trust me on this." The confusion on Rodriguez's face deepened. "How could you possibly know that, Santos? Your aircraft maintenance." The moment hung suspended as Maria realized there was no going back. Once she revealed her background, the quiet anonymity she had cultivated would be gone forever. But looking at the faces of her fellow soldiers, seeing their trust and confusion, she knew she had no choice. "Sir, before I was aircraft maintenance, I spent 3 years as an EOD specialist with the 754th Explosive Ordnance Disposal Company. I've seen this exact pattern before in Kandahar and Helmand Province. The blast signature, the debris pattern, the way the explosion was contained. This is a classic secondary device setup." The words felt strange, leaving her lips after months of careful concealment, but the relief was immediate. She was no longer pretending to be someone else. Captain Rodriguez's expression shifted from confusion to comprehension as pieces fell into place. "You're EOD qualified?" When Maria nodded, his posture straightened with new respect and understanding. "Then you're in charge of this situation, Santos. What do you need?" The transformation was remarkable. Suddenly, she wasn't just the quiet mechanic anymore. She was Staff Sergeant Maria Santos, explosives expert, and everyone was looking to her for guidance. "First, I need everyone back to the 50-meter perimeter, no exceptions. Second, I need someone to contact Base Command and request an EOD team from Bagram, but tell them we're treating this as an active secondary device situation. Third, I need a basic toolkit, wire cutters, multimeter, flashlight, and a mirror if anyone has one." Her voice carried the calm confidence of someone who had faced this exact scenario dozens of times before. As soldiers moved to establish the safety perimeter, Maria began her mental preparation for what lay ahead. She hadn't diffused a device in over a year, but the training was muscle memory, burned into her consciousness through hundreds of hours of practice and real-world application. The familiar weight of responsibility settled on her shoulders as she realized that once again, lives depended on her ability to stay calm under pressure and outsmart someone who had designed a device specifically to kill soldiers like the ones now depending on her. Sergeant Williams approached with the requested tools, his face showing the same mixture of surprise and respect she was seeing from everyone. "Santos, I had no idea. I mean, we knew you were good with mechanical systems, but this..." Maria took the toolkit and checked each item methodically. "Different kind of mechanical system, Williams, but the principles are the same. Understand how it works, find the weak points, and dismantle it safely." Maria approached the blast site with the careful, deliberate movements that had kept her alive through 3 years of bomb disposal work. Every step was calculated, every visual scan systematic and thorough. The primary blast had damaged the communications bunker's exterior wall and destroyed several pieces of equipment, but the real danger lay hidden somewhere in the debris field. Secondary devices were typically placed to maximize casualties among first responders, which meant the bomber had anticipated exactly this scenario. She found it nestled against the concrete foundation, partially concealed by twisted metal and rubble. The device was more sophisticated than typical. Insurgent explosives, a pressure plate trigger connected to approximately 20 pounds of military-grade explosive, probably stolen ordnance from a previous attack. The bomber had positioned it perfectly to catch anyone investigating the primary blast. Maria felt the familiar surge of focused concentration that accompanied every bomb disposal operation. "This is Staff Sergeant Santos," she called back to the perimeter. "I have eyes on a secondary device. Pressure plate trigger. Significant explosive payload. I'm beginning render-safe procedures now." The night fell silent except for the crackling of small fires and the distant hum of generators. Behind her, she could feel the weight of dozens of soldiers watching, trusting her expertise to eliminate the threat that could have killed them all. Working by flashlight, Maria began the delicate process of identifying the device's components and finding the safest approach for disarmament. Her hands moved with practiced precision, muscle memory guiding each movement as she traced wires and identified the trigger mechanism. This was the moment she had trained for, through countless hours of instruction and real-world experience. The convergence of technical knowledge, steady nerves, and absolute concentration. 23 minutes later, she emerged from the blast site carrying the disarmed trigger mechanism. The secondary device had been neutralized, its explosive components separated and rendered safe. As she crossed back to the perimeter, the silence broke into spontaneous applause from her fellow soldiers. Captain Rodriguez stepped forward with obvious relief and newfound respect. "Outstanding work, Santos. You saved lives tonight." As dawn broke over Forward Operating Base Phoenix, Maria Santos found herself in an entirely new position. The quiet mechanic who had spent months flying under the radar was now recognized as the hero who had prevented a catastrophe. Her fellow soldiers looked at her with fresh eyes, understanding that the woman they had worked alongside possessed extraordinary skills and courage they had never suspected. The transition wasn't entirely comfortable. Maria had grown accustomed to her anonymity, but she realized that hiding her abilities had been a disservice to her unit and herself. Her dual expertise in aircraft maintenance and explosive ordnance disposal made her uniquely valuable. and her willingness to step forward when lives were at stake demonstrated the kind of leadership the military desperately needed. In the days that followed, Maria would find herself training other soldiers in basic EOD awareness while continuing her aircraft maintenance duties. She had learned that true service sometimes requires stepping out of comfortable shadows and embracing the full scope of one's abilities. Her story became a reminder that heroes don't always announce themselves with fanfare. Sometimes they work quietly in maintenance bays, ready to rise to extraordinary challenges when their skills are needed most. The men and women who serve our country often carry hidden depths of training, experience, and courage that we never see until moments of crisis reveal their true capabilities. Staff Sergeant Maria Santos represents thousands of military personnel who possess specialized skills and unwavering dedication to protecting their fellow soldiers. Their stories remind us that heroism often wears work clothes and carries a toolkit, ready to save lives through expertise earned in the crucible of military service. If you found Aria's story inspiring, please subscribe to our channel for more true stories of military heroes whose courage and skill have made the difference between life and death. These are the stories that deserve to be told, honoring the sacrifice and service of those who stand ready to protect others, even when no one knows they have the training to do so.